in the same thing. With East Liberty itself, the idea was if we're going to redo it, then we had to demolish everything around it. We invested in a whole new system of highways. And what did that do? That basically created driveways for people to leave the city, to move further out, and the investment dollars just continued to be sprawled further and further. And we invested in the stadiums, not only the arena, but Three Rivers Stadium itself. And you can see even in this picture, which I love, the old infrastructure and the new infrastructure before it was demolished still being there. And all of this being new, all new development being constructed around it. That was what their economic development strategy was. It was big. It was go into the north side, tear out the north side, put in a mall, Allegheny Center Mall, go into East Liberty, tear out the neighborhood, build a big racetrack around it, and make it so that it's more of a automobile-driven area than what it was with neighborhood block by block. It was go into the Hill District, tear down the Hill District, put in this development, and then see what can happen around it. It was building these new tunnels and other areas to take you further out and building an airport. Well, eventually the economy died, because cities die and cities come back. Cities get flooded, cities get bombed, cities get burnt down, cities' economies fail. This is when it happened. Whoop. 1983, labor force numbers. That's when I graduated high school. This is what I lived through. It was pretty bad years for this city. But we saw it coming in a way too, because we knew the population was shrinking from the county and the city all the way from the 1960s on. The difference between the city and the rest of the country, well, look, during this time period, and obviously this, when it goes up, is a bad sign, this city was leading the country in population loss, job loss. There really wasn't anything. In fact, during the 80s, we lost more people than New Orleans lost after Katrina. But there was no federal bailout. There was no federal help. We just watched our friends go and start lives in other places. We watched our family members lose their jobs. We lost everything. And this region was knocked to its knees. But remember, cities are resilient. They come back. They become redefined and they have ways of returning. That's what Pittsburgh looked like for most of my 20s, my early 30s. This is the cork factory. Yeah, it's kind of a nice place to live now. Jason Gurley lives there for the Pirates. You know who was living there back when I was in my 20s and 30s? Homeless people. This was the legacy of that industrial era. This was the end of that era, but we were just living through it like we had lived through the grand times in the 1880s and the 1890s. And now we were paying the price that comes later. But the mills never left. And we hadn't realized it yet. But new mills were being emerged. And the new mills were just moving up the hills from the riverfront into Oakland. And they're called Carnegie Mellon, West Penn, University of Pittsburgh, UPMC. And during this time when we were down on our knees, our foundation community decided this would be a good time to invest in this city. And they started investing in a different era. Not investing in tearing down houses or building out airports. They started investing in arts and culture. They started investing in areas like the Cultural District, which at its time was a red light district where you could find prostitutes. I used to work for Lieutenant Governor. And he said to me one time after I picked him up, he was staying down by the convention center, which wasn't there at the time, it was the old convention center. He said, Pittsburgh has the ugliest prostitutes in Pittsburgh, or in this country. And he goes, they look like guys. I said, Mark, they are. But the investment started happening in different areas. Even though we were knocked down on our feet and we were trying to figure out a way to lift ourselves back, there was a different model than that model that Davy Lawrence put together. And it wasn't really taking hold, it was planting seeds. These were some of the leaders that kind of saw that and started to understand that it's not worth giving up on a city because cities can come back. And when I look at Detroit and I think about the challenges of Detroit and those that are trying to bring it back as a manufacturing hub and the other opportunities that are there for it to come back in many, many other ways, I hope that they see some of this work that the foundation community did in the 80s and 90s here. When we were treading water, they were holding our head above the water, and not only doing that, but planting the seeds for a future Pittsburgh that would be much different than the Pittsburgh of the past. They invested again in downtown. During the times when we were leading in unemployment, we were still building these amazing buildings downtown. That part of it hadn't changed. And in fact, it would seem that another part of it would come back too. Because under the Davy Lawrence model, when we were building Three Rivers Stadium and the Civic Arena and a convention center and an airport, government decided to follow that same route again. And we started building more stadiums and building a new convention center. And that really came full circle. From the time that David Lawrence took on a city that was just at the end of the industrial era, to the time that we finally realized that that model of demolition, of building sprawl and decline by building highways to take us further out, that model of just investing in downtown and building stadiums came to its second and ending phase, has now set us up for where we are today. So we can look back and we can start to say, all right, what did they do back in the days when this was a frontier town? What did we do back in the days when we built the largest industrial capital in this part of the world? What did we do after that collapsed, and how did we invest? And we have models to follow now and lessons to learn from the mistakes and the successes of what happened in the past. These are the giants whose shoulders we stand on. David Lawrence created the first clean air legislation in the country 20 years before Congress even thought about creating clean air. You know why? Because we had destroyed ours. And somebody had to say, you know what, and first getting elected, no more coal furnaces in Pittsburgh. You know how popular that is? That would be like me saying, you know, no more gas furnaces in Pittsburgh. You don't get reelected saying stuff like that because people then have to start buying something else in order to make up for it. He did it, and then he created air legislation because he knew that we were destroying ourselves in order to have this prosperity. Rachel Carson took on to Capitol Hill, Western Pennsylvania, Allegheny Valley gal, Chatham University graduate. These are giants in the environmental movement. They are our past as much as steel is. The opportunity to look at this combined sewer overflow problem that we have completely differently, living off of their legacy. The idea is that we don't have to just build massive tunnels underneath the city in order to solve the problem. We have the ability to invest in green technology, the ability to create in neighborhoods a whole new idea. Imagine this is Homewood, where right now there is no parks. All there is land that has been developed. And we start to take some of that land that we have and we develop green opportunities in there that not only solve our combined sewer overflow problem of putting all of our rainwater into the same system because it's going to be retained there, but also add value to the community. Now imagine if we hire people from the community to work on having that become a reality. The same amount of money is going to be spent, $3.5 billion. How can we spend it better? These are the opportunities that we have along our riverfronts, whether that's Hazelwood, or whether that's Lawrenceville, or whether it's Manchester and Chateau, where the old industrial sites went. Why bury tunnels where the water would go when we can build canals and have waterfront, riverfront waterfront, canal waterfront, and use it as opportunities to see that system become an attraction for future development and growth. There's the ladies, Helen Clay Frick and Mary Shenley, in their legacy of creating green throughout this city. We have opportunities to preserve the last remaining hills of this city, to create parks in the south and in the west, and to make sure that they don't get future development, but they stay green. You know, one of the most beautiful things about Pittsburgh, no matter where you stand, there's a tapestry behind it that makes it so beautiful. It's green. You see the hills, and the hills aren't all overdeveloped, and you can see through the buildings and through the different areas, and you have that beautiful thing. People don't realize it, but they get it. They just say, wow, I never knew Pittsburgh had so many trees. It's because every view you have has hillsides that have been preserved. This is the opportunity that we need to do in these types of neighborhoods. There's August Wilson, one of the greatest playwrights this country. This shouldn't be the way that we do urban development. These are the opportunities to redevelop this type of housing, not tear it down, but reinvest in it. You can't build things like this anymore. And that's really where the opportunity comes to be able to leverage this CSO problem into an opportunity to build neighborhoods. Then we have to realize this. 1950, 2.4 million people living in this general area. That's southwestern Pennsylvania. Today's population, 2.4 million. We didn't lose anybody. People didn't leave. Well, they left. But what they did is they built everywhere else. We built the roads. We built the infrastructure. We built the sewer lines and the water lines and the telephone poles and everything else. And then people wonder why their taxes go up. You know how much more infrastructure? It's not like we could roll the streets up and just close them off when people left or ending the sewer lines or infrastructure. But we have so much more public infrastructure we have to pay for now, and we incentivized it by making the development dollars go into new tunnels and new roads. We have to look at growth patterns and how we want to grow as a priority for our future. The ways of business in the past, the ways that Andy built out his empire, railroads, rivers. The way that the next level of entrepreneurs and investors will, public transit. Because the old economy, we talked about before, was based on the market. The new economy is based on getting people to work. And we have to build out a 21st century transit system that allows everyone the opportunity to have the jobs that are being created. This is Pittsburgh's future in a sense. And what's interesting about it is every one of these were under one roof down the street, right on Forbes Avenue. In Pittsburgh's past, we used to proudly say we have a glass company in a glass building, a steel company in a steel building, and an aluminum company in an aluminum building. Now we can say that we're the only place in the world that had all 5 of these companies under one roof. In the innovation, George Westinghouse, one of the greatest inventors this country has ever seen, second in patents to Edison. It wasn't that he created the air brake. He created the innovation around the air brake and so many other things. It's always been about innovation. It wasn't about steel, it was about the Bessemer process. And the innovation is where we invest. So we're not investing another time in more stadiums or more airports or more whatever. We start investing in people, in the people that will build out the industries. Because Westinghouse himself was able to employ more people than we have in the city of Pittsburgh right now. And we have to find those innovators and invest in them. That's the capital. It's in people. How do we do it? Well, this is what East Liberty looked like. This is what we did to it. We stopped doing this. We stopped doing it, tearing away these places. And we start doing this. This is our new vision for East Liberty. This is going to be all, if you know where, this is basically the area. Here's Whole Foods. This is now a parking lot. This is a tennis court. Kelly's is like right here, the little bar that I like. This is all going to be a new transit-oriented development center with apartments and living that will be a part that will connect East Liberty back to Shadyside as they were created to be. This is how we invest in public infrastructure with pedestrian bridges to be able to get people to the ability to get to where they want to get. But it all starts with a community plan. It doesn't start with a David Lawrence in an office, closed doors with the Mellon family. It starts in rooms like this and in church basements. And it talks to people and says, hey, what do you want to see happen in your neighborhood? And it takes a government that ends up becoming the enabler to see visions happen. It's like going like this. This was the old model. This was the industrial era. This was the Renaissance. And it's understanding Pittsburgh's next phase is like this. It's a bottom-up approach where people have a say in their own communities. The guys that started it, who helped to build a middle class, are the young entrepreneurs of today, where we have to make sure that they have a place at the table. That's my buddy Justin Strong. He started the Shadow Lounge on a credit card, then he maxed out. He had a dream and a vision. He now saw the success. He was the first person to invest in East Liberty when he saw it and nobody else would. His reward is that he's been priced out of the place that he created. We're going to make sure there's a place for Justin, just like there was a place for these guys to be able to get into the middle class. Justin will be fine. Justin's a serial entrepreneur. He can't help himself. He'll be in a location for about a year before he'll be buying in the next neighborhood. And the next neighborhood's going to be Larimer. And when he starts to redevelop Larimer, you know what's going to happen? A lot more people are going to come in, but this time he learned the lesson, because this time he'll own his own building and nobody will take him out. So that's the different Pittsburghs, the different eras that this city has sort of lived by. And there's this new era that gets me really excited to see where we're going to be going. But there's something that we need to look at, because this is really the challenge. Although there's a lot of good happening in this city now, and probably the most that I've seen in my lifetime, we're back to 1908, because it's a tale of two cities. And we're living with this disparity once again. We're living in a city where 1 out of every 4 residents are living in poverty, and most of them are children. We're living in a city where the opportunities for some are minimal, and where people are working an entire lifetime in these new mills, the hospitals and universities, but still not able to see middle class. So we have this whole new challenge, just like that Pittsburgh survey did, of helping to register, understand, and then push to see the social change happen. It's not going to happen at the federal level. It's not going to happen at state capitals. What's happening in great social change is happening in cities around the world. This is where we are. Basically, the ratio of black versus white unemployment rates, and we're on the wrong end of the scale. The percent of 18 to 64-year-old black residents living in poverty, and we're not even talking about it. Pittsburgh is leading in this country, and we have an entire, not one generation, but several generations that are unemployed, leading unemployment on a national level. The change in jobs for metropolitan regions. What brought those Southern and Eastern Europeans here was the opportunity to work in a mill. What we aren't creating are jobs, because we're investing dollars into Walgreens and other retail developments instead of investing in entrepreneurs and new ideas that will help to spur the creation of more jobs. We're missing the boat. We're basically creating jobs that are keeping people at poverty levels, while instead of investing it in the areas where there's an opportunity for others. So what do? We can support more community-based development. We can reinvest into our infrastructure the same way that they did back in the old days. We can create family-sustaining jobs, and we can provide early education for all children. If you ask anybody in education, the one thing that would help to get people to break the cycle of poverty, it is early childhood. Supporting community-based development. Like we talked about, this East Liberty community vision was started back in 1996. I mean, what we're seeing now and people talking about East Liberty, they don't understand that it started with just a small group of people and then reached out to an entire community. And it took 2 years to build the vision plan. And you can go online at East Liberty Development and read the vision plan and see we've been pretty good at making sure that the investments occurred. But we also started to understand on Baum and Center, development was occurring too quickly. And so we put the brakes on, in a sense, by allowing a community process to come in. That community process, many said, would stop development. It didn't. In fact, it only assured that quality development occurred. And now Baum and Center and East Liberty are seeing the benefits of having a community plan behind it. Why is it beneficial? Because the last thing any developer wants to face is opposition before a zoning board, a city council, or a planning commission. If you do the heavy lifting and you get the plans done and you get the community behind it, and then you find the developers to do it, you'll see more economic development and growth, not less. Greater Hill District Master Plan. We're in the first phases of this now, which comes down to, again, what are we going to do with the Penguins? The Penguins want all this money, and they want to build out this 28 acres. But if we only let those 28 acres develop, then we've done the same mistakes that they did back with David Lawrence. We have to make sure that those dollars go beyond the acres, that they go and they include what's considered the Crawford section in the Hill Master Plan. It goes up to Crawford Street, it goes down to Fifth Avenue, it goes up into Pride Street, so that if they're getting those new tree planters that I talked about, and beautiful new trees and new sidewalks and decorative lights, and you're standing at Consol Energy Center and you're going, wow, that's really pretty, and then you don't even move your feet, you just pivot, and you look at Fifth Avenue, and there's rusted out trolley poles with lights jammed in them, no trees except one dead tree up by Pride Street. The sidewalks have asphalt. How is economic development and prosperity ever going to come to that part when we don't even have the infrastructure to lure a developer in order to be able to do it? So we have to share, and we have to make sure that it goes beyond those footprints of just what the development is itself. Housing, absolutely critical, because housing has two things. Number one, it has property tax, and number two, it usually has wage tax because people make money. And cities and towns are fueled by those. So if you want to stop closing neighborhood schools, then you need to bring more people into it. And you need to partner strategically with organizations that are out there doing it. And we're seeing this happen in Larimer as well, the place that I know that Justin will end up. But it takes a while to get to that point. It starts with that community vision, and then it moves all the way to the point where grants and other money becomes available. Investing in our infrastructure. It's multimodal. You know, everyone says, hey, we should have a subway from downtown to Oakland. Yeah, well, that will never be built. I mean, just, you know, the new federal match is 50-50. We don't even have a local match to put up for it. So we have to think of ways that we're going to be able to create something that will be affordable, and then on a bigger scale, find a way to convince people that we have to invest in public transit, same way that we invested in rail and river back with the old economy. BRT system that would be able to utilize from downtown to Oakland would be combined with an LRT system that would go countywide, that would utilize our present bus system to be able to connect to it, and where we start to create a complete streets model within the city so that pedestrian, bike, BRT, LRT, and bus all combine together in a way that can get people to where they need to get to. Those are neighborhoods. I have no idea what this slide was for. I do. Actually, I didn't at first. So we have this rail line that goes from Hazelwood outside the door. You know, it's on Forbes Avenue. You see that train go through that tunnel under by CMU. And it goes all the way down to Lawrenceville. That train line is an opportunity for a heavy rail system to be able to get you down in Hazelwood to CMU, to Bauman Center, to Lawrenceville, that would then connect with the Martin Luther King busway that would take you out east all the way over to here and take you downtown, which would then connect right outside CMU with the BRT system that would take you from downtown to Oakland with stops in places like Uptown and the Hill so that we can start to see transit-oriented development happen. And it wouldn't take any more than 2 stops or one transfer to be able to get to any of these areas in this area. And it would be done on a very inexpensive means compared to others. The BRT, like I said, would not just go directly from downtown to Oakland, but it would have to have stops within Uptown and the Hill to make sure that there are benefits to being able to develop around it. The South, we have these old systems. I think this is the old 52 in Allentown. How many people have been to Allentown? All right, that's cool. That's the next place. If you have money, invest. Because the moment that we get this thing back running, this light rail system, it's a beautiful neighborhood, it's very affordable, and I think I can get a lot of hipsters to move there. So it's, the secret of urban planning is the 82nd and the 101st of urban planning is the arts community and the gay community. Because once they move in, then people start saying, hey, what's going on there? And that happens all over the world. It's, I still remember in Lawrenceville in the early 90s, there was a group of in the gay community that started moving to Lawrenceville because Shadyside became too expensive and Friendship was becoming more family oriented, and they called themselves the Boys of Lawrenceville, and they had a statement. It's, we're here, we're queer, things are going to start to get pretty. And it started to change Lawrenceville in the process. This again looks at what the present system is being proposed for this combined sewer overflow. And as you can see, almost and all these little dots are major areas, but this is where these huge pipes are being planned. These gigantic pipes are right along the riverfront where we can daylight them, we can do things like creating boardwalks so that the access to the river is greater. We can do so much more than just dig up the ground and bury big pipes. and we have 1 year to do it. That's it. We got next year to do it. And with the help of the foundation community and engineering firms, we can come up with a much better way that then we'll start to see these old industrial areas become profitable in the sense of having mixed-use housing, commercial development, retail development, and a lot of other things. These are the options. This is the opportunity. And within the neighborhoods, when we create these green spaces, the opportunity is to employ people locally to be able to do it. Turning something like this into something like this. And this is what is actually happening. This is, I'm not sure if this is Stockholm. Looks like Hammarby in Stockholm. But there's no pipes. They daylight everything, and they use water features in order to enhance the value of development. Creating the family-sustaining jobs. This is just a map of labor force unemployment census tract. The darker it gets, the more the unemployment is. And this is a map of tax delinquency. So what do you notice? The properties that are tax delinquent are in the same neighborhoods that have the highest unemployment. Not a very big secret. So we have to go look at a small level of getting people back under employment. This is a great opportunity. That's my buddy Steve Shelton. He created the Trade Institute of Pittsburgh. He's a rough Republican guy, bricklayer. Realized that he couldn't find anybody to do the work that he needed because there's a certain art to bricklaying as well. Try to build an arch. I couldn't do it. And so he went and he's decided to train his own folks. 100% of his students are formerly incarcerated. 100% of his students have